Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's already February in 2021, so where'd the last month go? I don't know if anyone else is feeling that way, but last year felt so long, and this year I think is going by pretty quickly. This week, I have a guest who is a comedian and a podcast host. Does that sound familiar? But we have totally different paths otherwise. So she works in PR, and she ended up doing comedy for a little bit different reason than I did. And she's just really cool. I've gone to see her, one of her shows that she curated in London, where I'm living, and we had a great time talking. I think one thing I like so far this season is I've had a lot of fun with each of the guests, even when we're discussing serious things. And I think you'll find that this one. So we do talk about comedy quite a bit, and I think it'll be an interesting perspective for people. I know some of my friends have followed my time in comedy so far and have learned quite a bit as I've been learning. But this guest, Leyton, she has an interesting perspective on like gender, especially females in comedy. And I really loved what she had to say. She's also written some things about body image and dieting. And admittedly, that's something that has been a hindrance for me for a long time. And I know for a lot of other people. And I just really enjoyed that she was willing to talk about certain things and that we got to do that. The initial idea for the Spotify playlist that I created, which I haven't talked about, but there's a Spotify playlist now with all of the Groundhog's Day songs. So my Fun 5 questions. If this is your first time listening, I do a Fun 5. It's questions at the end of the episode. And one of the questions that I ask guests, and that you can even answer yourself and even comment to me, maybe in social media, but one of the questions I asked the guests is, if every day was Groundhog's Day, and this really harkens back to 2020, but I think we're in it now too. A lot of us are still in lockdown. What song would you have on your alarm clock? And in Groundhog's Day, the movie, Bill Murray had I Got You Babe playing. So it has to be a song that you would sacrifice, basically, but that you also really love. And I thought of during this episode making a Spotify playlist of all the songs, and so there is one now, so you can look up the More Than Work podcast Groundhog's Day playlist basically and check it out. And it's actually kind of a fun playlist, and it's getting bigger, so just wanted to mention that, give that a plug. And at the end we laugh around both of our particular enjoyment of people falling. I've been known to search on YouTube for people falling, and also Harry Styles. I guess those are the two things I've been obsessed with lately. But anyway, thanks for being here and joining me this week. This season we've had some amazing guests. This is going to be a really fun one, and then we have some really exciting stuff coming up. So I can't wait for you to hear this episode and the next ones. Thanks a lot for being here and for your support. Don't forget to like and subscribe and review and everything. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. Now we're going to go into an ad and the music and then the show. Welcome to More Than Work, the podcast reminding you that your self-worth is defined by more than your job title. I'm Rabia, an IT project manager, comedian, nonprofit volunteer, and sometimes activist. Every week, I'll chat with a guest about pursuing passions outside of work or creating meaningful opportunities inside their workplace. As you listen, I hope you'll be inspired to do the same. Hey guys, well this is a guest from across the pond for the US listeners, which I've looked and most of my listeners are in the US, so this will be fun for everyone. I have someone I've met actually in person, one of the rare people I've met in person in London since living here just because of lockdowns. But let's bring on our guest today. It's Vix Leyton. She's a PR manager and a comedian. Vix, welcome.
Hi. I'm not even English as well for your American listeners. I'm a Welsh person exiled to England. So, I had to cross a bridge to get here, but I'm not quite as far as you.
But yeah, that's even more fun too, because I've had a few friends actually, and I guess we'll just get right in, right? But I've had a few friends ask me like what the different accents are and can I tell the difference and stuff like that. And it's always fun I've asked a few British people I know, what's your accent? And one says posh, and he's like, oh, I'm posh. I'm like, okay.
That's not an accent. That's not a regional dialect.
It seems like it's just more of an attitude, right? Like, and then I know Northern's a little bit different than down here where I am in London.
Yeah.
But some people I just can't figure out anyway. So do you think your accent is very Welsh or?
It is when I've had a drink. Then I can become more Welsh, or if I'm with other Welsh people, it will ramp up. But I've lived in London for 6 years now, and it's watered it down a little bit. But I'm from South Wales, which is the slightly softer side of the accent anyway. So
okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And I know even in the US, people end up getting different accents, regional accents from the US when they're.
And you mirror other people sometimes inadvertently.
Yeah.
You find yourself.
When I lived in Dallas, I started talking a little bit Southern, you know? And not that much because they don't even talk like that. So it's almost like what was going on with me was the question, you know?
It's a cry for help.
But yeah. So you work in PR for your day job, and you've been doing that for quite a long time now.
Yeah, 15 years, I think. Ugh, that's too much work for how old I think I am. But yeah. Yeah, about 15 years.
Like our work experience, it's kind of like people with kids. I think they're the same way. Like they start to. My mom can't believe she has 2 kids over 40. You know, she kind of thinks that makes her feel older.
All my friends are getting older. I'm like, oh, that's a mature old age. Oh, we're in the same school year. I see. Yeah.
So with PR, you end up talking to a lot of people, and I know in comedy you end up doing that. But let's just talk about your career in PR first, and kind of then what led you into doing comedy. So how do you like doing PR, and kind of what's your favorite thing about that career?
It's every day is different with PR. So the kind of PR that I enjoy doing is usually something that is quite dull on the base of it, and then it's a lot of challenges and problems to solve. How do you make it interesting to people? How do you create a story around it that's enough about what you're selling for it to be selling it, but also fun or interesting enough that it will be covered by press? So I enjoy taking something and putting a different spin on it. So I started off wanting to do music PR. But unfortunately, none of the music PR companies actually wanted someone with no PR experience. Shockingly, when I came out of university, I couldn't believe it. I was applying for all these graduate jobs in the same way I think loads of people experience this, where they were graduate positions, so they paid virtually nothing, but they expected you to somehow have experience before.
Yeah.
But I couldn't get any experience because no one would give me the graduate position. So I kind of felt like I was on this sad carousel of I had no way to get the experience and no experience to get the experience. So I was working in a call center at the time, doing car insurance claims, very exciting. And a PR position popped up within the business in a sister company that was for a car insurance price comparison site. And I can talk about it. It's a positive story. So I was looking at Admiral, which is a big insurance company in the UK, and it was confused.com. And the policy at Admiral Group was they wanted everybody to apply for any job that they thought that they could do and that fit their aspiration. They were really supportive. So even at a call center level, if you thought you could do a PR job, not only did they want you to apply for it, they did all they could to try and support internal candidates into those roles. So I had an opportunity as part of the application process to meet the team before the interview, to go and do what they called a port of call, which was sit with a marketing person on that team for an hour and just find out a little bit about what they did, which was really cool. And it's not something that they had to do, but they very much believed in where you had talent within, putting it where you could. So a lot of people in senior roles at Admiral Group started on the phones in the call center, and those people are as valued to the business as the people that are making all the sort of the directorial decisions, which was a really nice vibe. And I was lucky because that was one of the first jobs I did out of uni, and I came to expect that and look for it in other interviews after that happened to me. I just thought, right, that is the kind of question when they ask, you know, have you got any questions for us to interview? That's the question I'd ask. And if they got that question wrong, I didn't want to work there, because I applied for this PR job over at confused.com, PR executive, got all the way to the final interview, didn't get it because I had no experience. And yeah, which could have been where the story ended. But no, they created a PR assistant role for me because they recognized that I was really passionate about it, that I had a lot to give. I had a different perspective on the candidates that they'd seen for the higher role. So they made a job for me. So I got to move from my claims handling role over to PR. And it was personal finance and cars, not music. But I really loved it. I enjoyed that I'd worked on the phones, that I got a real sense of what customers' problems were. So I had this unique perspective because I was talking to journalists a lot, and I had a unique perspective that other PRs didn't have because I'd done it. So I got a reputation quickly. I didn't know anything about PR. I did know about car insurance. So when I was meeting journalists, they could ask me technical questions. They could call me and say, right, is this how I understand it? And I'd be able to answer it in a way that other PRs for other companies couldn't. So I got a reputation for also being very chatty. So I made friends quite quickly, and I made friends with a lot of junior journalists that were also quite new. So we kind of helped each other out. And then when they became editors later down the line, they didn't forget me. We came up together. So it was really, it was a really cool start to PR. And it changed me. Then I had the experience in personal finance. So even though I always regretted not trying to go into entertainment PR because it was what I initially started, I enjoyed what I did. And when you've got something that you're good at, you might as well carry on with it. So I did a lot of other personal finance PR jobs.
That's cool. And I think the aspect of, first of all, knowing the kind of company you want to look for going forward is so important, because actually I've talked to a few like leadership coach type people, or, those executives on this podcast. And that's one thing, is like a lot of the people who are entrepreneurs or coaches or whatever, they know what to look for in a place they work, or they start their own business because they don't find it. So you learn that pretty early on in your career to look for that, right?
Yeah, I was lucky. I was spoiled with my first job, and I had a brilliant time with them. And so, but like I said, it shaped the businesses that I was looking for from that point on. And I've typically worked and gravitated towards that kind of leadership with that kind of style, which has served me very well. And I think if I didn't work for those types of businesses, comedy wouldn't have taken off for me, because I needed that support. So in the last couple of roles I've had, I've needed that support from my business to recognize that I was doing something completely different that contrasted with my day job, but didn't encroach on it. And it takes somebody with an entrepreneurial spirit to see that, I think, rather than see it as something that is a big deal to you and might have a negative impact on the work that you do each day.
Yeah, no, that's true. Because I mean, even in my job, it's the same way. And actually, right before the holidays, my CEO asked if I wanted to do a 5-minute. He goes, "Hey, you want to do 5 minutes?" And it was almost like, "Oh, are you in the industry? Are you my booker?" And it was cool though. I got to do 5 minutes on a Teams call, just end of year thing, and it went well. I had to clean up a few things, for work.
It's amazing how many comedians don't. When you book, because I booked a few corporate gigs in December, and I thought it was kind of implicit that if it's at lunchtime, you don't you keep it PG. No.
Yeah. No.
No.
It's like,
you only have to find that out once. I was like, wow, we're going there, are we? We're going there at this lunchtime gig when no one's drunk. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, and my comedy's not really, I don't talk about it much on here, but I mean, my comedy's not too blue. I'm a bit blue, like just as a person. And then people talk to me and they're like, but they're kind of surprised that my comedy's pretty clean. And, so it wasn't that hard to do. But yeah, for some people, I can't imagine that they can even go up and say hello, basically.
I guess it's kind of in you as a PR marketer. You know people's levels and you play to the safest.
Yeah.
So you kind of know what the trigger points are, because I'm looking out for this in my day job all the time. So if somebody sends me something to review, like they've written a blog for a magazine or they've been approached to write something, part of my job is to review that and check there are no flags in there or something that might be inappropriate. So it's like a throwaway comment about, oh, some guy bit about in China and now this has happened. It's like, no. You kind of put our business's name next to that kind of take, even as a joke. So you kind of self-censor, because it's my job to be that person, to keep it safe, to make sure when people give comments to press, it's got to be, the game is making it fun and interesting, but also appropriate. So my
Mhm.
favorite career moment, because I was spokesperson for a few brands as part of the role, is I got a quote from Jurassic Park into a comment I did about the spec of a new iPhone. And loads of people printed it and nobody knew.
Yeah, my favorite thing used to be when we were in meetings in person. I would say something from The Big Lebowski, you know,
Yeah, it's
and
like an
just
Easter egg for people who get it. And I love the idea that people were like opening up the Telegraph
yeah,
newspaper and going, hang on, that's not her quote, that's Jeff Goldblum.
yeah, yeah, it's great because they don't know. Like, I'll be all some new information has come to light, and that's all. I know what I'm doing, you know, and I'd safe to say now 'cause I don't do that anymore. But yeah, I get it. That's fun.
Yeah. And I guess the thing, yeah, it was a bit of a contradiction in that I did this PR job where I was going out and meeting journalists on a one-to-one level, going to networking events on my own,
Mhm.
acting as a company spokesperson. And I was really phobic of public speaking at the
Mhm.
same time. So people could see that I was outgoing and chatty and I'd be the person that they put forward for things. And I couldn't do them because I was making myself sick with the anxiety of having to speak in front of even like people in my own office who are my friends. Like if there was a gathering of people, I just have this physical kind of psychosomatic response to it. And that embarrassed me because I couldn't even point to a situation in my past life that had triggered it. Because I used to be a show offy kid. I did GCSE drama in
Yeah.
high school, properly winged it with a lot of stuff in my teenage years. But the older I got, the more nervous I got about public speaking. There was no moment where like my top fell off or I forgot my lines or anything that I could point to and go, oh, it's because of that. I don't know how it happens. It went from normal nerves that you get when you know, big match mentality nerves to absolute like unmanageable stress for the smallest of things. And I was embarrassed about it and annoyed about it because I kept going to conferences and complaining about the amount of male, pale, and stale speakers that you would see on a panel. It's like,
Yeah.
these guys are all white and 50 and they're talking about digital marketing. Where are all the women? Why aren't they being asked? And then they would ask me and I'd say no. So I was like, oh,
Right.
I'm the women in this case and I'm not doing it. I'm expecting other people to step up and do something I'm not prepared to do myself. So I need to fix it. So I made a drunken New Year's resolution 2 years ago. Signed up for the Funny Women Stand Up to Stand Out course, which was like an afternoon course for business skills that you learn through stand up.
Mhm.
And I was really nervous about it. I nearly didn't do it. And then I tweeted that I was planning to do it and found somebody else who was also Welsh who was traveling up to do it as well. And once somebody knew I was supposed to be there, that was the thing that I needed to push me to actually turn up. Because I was like, oh, if I chicken out, that person will know. And I quite
Right.
liked her and I was quite looking forward to seeing her. And she was reassured by the fact that I was going. So I did I can do so much for other people that I can't do for myself. Like if I
Mhm.
need ketchup in a restaurant, I will just not have ketchup. If my friend needs ketchup, I will be there with my hand up going, this person needs ketchup. And so it was that. It was like, oh, my friend Jen's expecting me to be there, so I will be there.
Yeah.
And it was, yeah, it was a really good session. And it kind of examined why you were getting yourself into a lather over this kind of thing. Because there were a lot of people in the room with a similar outlook, but I was the only person that probably was as extreme as I was. And like going around the circle, I had to say something, and my leg was twitching, my eyelid was doing that weird twitching thing. And I managed to speak, and a few people laughed at the thing that I had to say, and I liked it. When I was leaving, the lady that runs the course said, "Oh, so what are you going to do next? What's your next comedy thing?" And I was like, what's my next comedy thing? I hadn't really thought of it. The only thing I wanted to do was try and get over the fear. And now I was still scared. Like it didn't
Mhm.
change, but I knew I could do it. And there's something different in knowing you can do it. Like I put myself through it. I'd voluntarily put myself through it and come
Yeah.
out the other side. And I kind of wanted to carry on with it, but I was very passive in my desire to carry on with it. So I just put something on Facebook and said, "Oh, I want to do stand-up comedy. Who's going to help me?" And no one. Funny enough, loads of people
Yeah.
went, "Oh my god, you'd be so great at it," but no one had any practical leads for me. So I was like, "Well, that's fine then." So I genuinely, I did all I could. In my mind, I could tick it off. I was like, well, "I've done all I can." I really worked hard. Nobody had. nobody helped me, so that's done. And I tweeted about it as well. And the comedian Mark Watson was doing a 26.2 hour marathon show. So the time length was to do with like the time of a marathon. And he was looking for people to take up challenges as part of it to raise money for charity. And we were tweeting about something else. And he said, "Did I see that you were doing stand-up comedy now?" And I was like, "No, I did a course. That's very different. That's very different to actually doing stand-up comedy." And he suggested that I could try and get over my fear of public speaking and get into stand-up by doing that as a challenge for his show. So he put together like a little set of people that could help me, and I did little sessions, and he got me on stage to talk, and I got to speak to like Ian Stone did a session with me, like coming up with material, and it was so surreal. But by the time I got off stage, like the fourth time over the course, and I'd been up for like 40 hours by that point because we'd all stayed, because the show is literally 26 hours and everyone stays. So by the end of it, it was pretty feral. But I'd made a few friends with other comedians at that point. And by the time I left, I'd met somebody who booked me for my first ever spot. So
nice.
And I went and did it, and it was terrible. And no one said it was terrible, but I know it's terrible. Looking back, like I fell into all of the traps of like the generic cliche jokes, like, "Oh, I thought I should think of you all naked," like every trope every comedian does when they're new. And having spent time on the open mic circuit, you recognize the sign.
Well, or have you seen where someone says it was their first gig? And they've said that before, and I'm like, no, it's not.
No, hang on. Yeah, with like, you last week.
Here at this time? For what? Yeah. So do you think, just looking at starting comedy in that way, though, someone basically giving you a shot and you didn't have experience, and you look back at when you started PR at the company you were at, and again, someone giving you a shot when you didn't really have experience, did you recognize that as a theme for you, I guess? Or maybe just, do you think you went for it when you did with the comedy, like, and say, okay, fine, I'll jump into the deep end and do this 26.2 hour thing because I've already been here before?
It was a bit of both. Like, I came off that again with the similar energy of, oh my God, I really want to do this. And as I'd left the show that day, people had come up to me and gone, you've got it. You're really funny. You should definitely do more with it. So I was really pumped for about 24 hours. And then, then you start looking back and critiquing your own thing. And I was like, oh, actually, they're probably saying it because they're kind or because I was really nervous. And I kind of retrofitted it into, oh, is it really something I'm good at, or is it just we were all carried away on the day and wanting to say nice things to be good people? So if I hadn't have had the DM that I got then from the comedian that I met who ran his own night to say, do you want to do this gig? I might not have pursued it with the passion that I then did after having that one. So I think the big thing in my career, the big theme of my career has been networking, and I'm so interested in people that I will chat to anyone. Like, I want to make friends all the time, and it's amazing how often that has somewhere down the road paid off for me. It's not necessarily what you intend, but people I met 10 years ago who are doing comedy or doing corporates, when I decided I wanted to run some corporate gigs, I was able to sort of tap them up, and not in a cynical way, because when I made friends with them, when we started chatting, I didn't know any of this was going to happen, but because I meet so many people and I try and stay in touch with a lot of people because that's the personality style I've got.
Yeah.
There was a lot of goodwill for me, and there were a lot of people that I didn't realize did any of the stuff that they do that were then able to help me. So when I started, because I do a podcast now, like a panel show podcast, and when I started doing that, it turned out that I knew somebody who had a studio who could give me a good deal. I knew a producer who could make the episode sound amazing. I knew a photographer who knew someone who was starting out freelance who wanted photos in their portfolio of a lot of different things, which is how I got my photo shoot, which made it look like a thing before it was even a thing. So we'd done all the photos and the branding before the podcast even existed. And just having that when I was asking guests on it made it look like a real deal. So
Mhm.
it's a bit Emperor's New Clothes.
Yeah.
I had a brand and pictures, but I didn't have a thing. But people believed I had a thing because otherwise, why would I have a brand and pictures? So, so yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's
I,
like which comes
yeah.
first. But in that case, that worked out well, right?
And I like being part of that network, this kind of barter network. So whenever somebody's like starting a new business or they need any PR help, I love when people come and ask for advice. And I've found myself writing press releases for people or doing outreach plans or quickly speaking to a journalist to put someone in touch. Like it's part of my day-to-day life, these kind of
Mm.
little bargains that you do. But I didn't realize they'd all pay off quite as handsomely as they did for the podcast coming together.
Yeah. Do you think now that because you had the skills of the one-on-one, you were okay and
Yeah.
comfortable talking to people one-on-one? Do you think that with comedy now, your skills of talking about other things besides your comedy have improved? Like, are you able to do a panel at some convention and things like that? Did it help you with that?
Yeah, I love it. It's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy though, because so far most of the panels I've been on or the talks I've been asked to give are about how comedy helped me become a corporate speaker. But the only corporate speaking I do is about how comedy helped me become a corporate speaker. So, it's really weird.
So you're now an expert in
Yeah,
the thing.
by pure accident. But yeah, I'm happy to do panels now. I've done a few in lockdown about PR and SEO. I'm happy to present. I'm volunteering to present now rather than hiding at the back and hoping I'm not asked. So it's
Mhm.
completely transformed how I am as a business person in terms of, all the stuff that you learn to manage, like bad feedback, those kind of things, the resilience that you need for that, the resilience you need to assert yourself in a quite, sometimes quite masculine environment.
Yeah.
So, like it is getting better, but there are some comedy gigs where you walk in and you might not even only be the only woman on the bill. You might be the only woman in the whole place.
Right. Yeah.
So I've done a few comedy nights like that. And yeah, you learn to be a bit braver. Like also going into venues that normally I would be scared to go into, I'm striding into on my own.
Hmm.
So come and do my 5 minutes set. But it's also helped me with work-life balance hugely because when you move from your day job to comedy, you can't be answering your emails if you're sat waiting to go on. And a
Yeah.
lot of the time when you're at an open mic, you're in the audience, you can't be there checking your phone, looking at your emails, scanning on LinkedIn. You have to be present at the place that you are. And that was
Yeah.
something I always struggled with. PR was so within my DNA. And I think to a degree, it became my personality. I
Yeah.
was
And
so
always being
focused.
connected.
Yeah, I was so focused on like the concept of a PR person, this always on mentality. I was answering emails at 11 o'clock. No one told me to. It was a culture I'd created myself because before I was any good at my job, the one thing I did have available to me was being available.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I primed up those skills, being available, turning things around quickly. And then when I became better and I became more senior, I couldn't switch it off. So I was checking my work emails the moment I woke up and probably checking them the moment I went to bed. It really needed it. Same with holidays, but having something completely different where you had to be a separate person, I think really changed my perspective in loads of ways. So
And then in thinking about just networking and stuff, I mean, I think that's something that I still don't fully grasp how to do, and I think that's something a lot of people struggle with is forming authentic connections, but also connections where you may give and receive something. And I think in friendships, it's easy to understand. Like, I have a friend who does all my design for me, and
yeah,
he's great, and he just wants to do it because he believes in what I'm doing, and I still don't know what I'm giving him, but it seems okay because we have our friendship. But I don't know, how do you network with people that you've never met? Like, what are tips that you have for that, just in general? I mean, a lot of people have told me that they hate networking. I've said it before.
I never minded being in a room with people because I always, like I said, I'll do for other people what I can't do for myself. So if I'd
Mhm.
see like a group of 3 or 4 people struggling, I join in. And I
Mhm.
always had, I think I had to learn this through doing the one-to-ones with journalists. Some you get on with really well, some aren't your people, and there's a lot of dead air. And if it's just two of you at lunch, you have to fill it. So I built all these anecdotes up that were almost like set pieces in material, and some of them have become now set pieces in my comedy. I've built up all these little icebreakers in my head to try and get through those awkward moments, because with PR, when you meet a journalist, they have to think you're competent, but ultimately they have to like you, because you want to be at the front of the queue for them to call. If there are 8 different insurance companies, the only thing you might have going for you, because they're all like for like, is they like you the best.
Right.
Okay. Or you're the most fun to chat to, or you'd be the most fun to invite to an event. So I kind of learned that on the job, but everybody's just, it doesn't matter who they are. And I guess you learn this, you know this from your own podcast. Everybody is just, we're all just rubbish humans pretending that we know what we're doing. And there's something quite empowering about that. So it's just get started, really. I've got no shame. A lot of people I book on the podcast, I just DM. Mm-hmm. I'm like, hello. Yeah. I guess it's got to be authentic. So I wouldn't ever message somebody and say, oh my God, I love your podcast, if I hadn't listened to it, or if I didn't love it. So whenever I'm doing that kind of reaching out to people, I hate that phrase reach out. I've just used it. It's for the 4 tops and the 4 tops alone. But whenever I'm getting in touch with people, it's always as honest as I can be. So it will be like, I've got this fee for a gig. It's not in any way a reflection of your value or your talent. It is literally what I can afford. Which makes it easier to have those conversations, just being really, really honest. So like, I'm a huge fan of yours. I'm doing this thing. Do you want to be part of it? I still do. I do a lot of my networking on Twitter, because those conversations are already happening. And if people are having them, they don't mind you jumping in if you've got something to say. So like, somebody was talking about dresses for women who are plus size the other day, and I joined in because I had a take on it. Then we started following each other back. And then before you know it, you're chatting quite often. And it's somebody that is now in your network without you even really having to try. But yeah, I think putting aside your shyness or the awkwardness of enthusiasm is pretty priceless.
No, that's true. That's good. And I mean, I think also just being authentic, like if you're authentically interested in other people and you just talk to them, then you're not putting them out by asking them just to have a conversation of some sort, right? It's just I also like giving people positive feedback. I like telling somebody that their outfit is nice, or if they've done a talk, like, oh, I love that point. Like, I got into the habit of doing that because I love it when it happens to me, but I realized I wasn't doing it. Like, there's nothing more exciting than somebody on the tube, like, just before, when you could touch people, touching you on the arm and going, oh my God, I love your eyeshadow. And I would walk away skipping up the road like I'd won the lottery. Like, there is nothing nicer than an unsolicited compliment. So I got into the habit of doing that. So if there's a book that I read that I liked, I'd find the author and tweet them. If there was an article I liked to read, I would try and find something about it, find their email and message them about it. But also with like comedy networking particularly, and I guess this is probably true of most networking, offering to buy someone a drink and have a chat goes a long way. So when I was new to the comedy circuit, I would stick around at the end and try and get to know the MC, not in the kind of way that's sharky, but just because I had the time. If I was out for the evening, odds are I'd had 1 or 2 wines already, and I wouldn't mind having another one. And it was just the kind of courtesy of, you put on the night, I'd like to buy you a drink. Let's, you learn a lot from people. And that was how I found out about other nights that might be great and the ones to avoid. And I had a lot of insight straight away. So I noticed over here too, and I don't know, I mean, you've been in comedy here for a long in London.
2 years? So but one of them's been in lockdown, so different way.
Yeah, I know the whole lockdown thing's been interesting, but the thing that I noticed so far is people are more open and generous here with information and time and whatever, because in the States, I'll tell you, like, these are these gigs where you're not getting paid. You're maybe getting 3 or 5 minutes, and people are acting like you're coming for them. Like, I don't want to talk to you and I don't want to give you any advice or whatever, because you're going to get this non-coveted position that I'm in. It's so strange. But here I just noticed people you were super friendly. That's why we're talking. And
oh, that's not true of everybody. No, those gigs exist too. You just don't do them. If you find the right people early on and get into that network of like support and help, you are quite lucky. But yeah, there were some gigs when I was before lockdown that I didn't have a shot at, because it was always, you'd always see the same faces over and over again, and they weren't the ones that were necessarily open to approach. So there are cliques, but
Yeah.
you don't have to be in them. And I think because I've come into it a bit older,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm 36 now. I was 35 when I started.
Yeah.
I'm more of an adult about it, I think. Like, I don't, you can see people for what they are. So there will be some promoters that are a bit power trippy that do treat it like you should be really grateful to even be here. And then they're shaking the collection bucket at you.
Yeah.
I mean, you were the show.
Yeah. Like, okay.
It's like, okay. Like, I don't mind. I don't mind throwing in like a fiver if I've had a great time, because I totally get it. Promoters need that to keep going. But the expectation, I found, as somebody who works for a living and is a career person, I found that outrageous. Like, but I just performed here for free for you. I know I'm learning, but I was in the show. So
that's an interesting thing too, is just being someone who's been in the workforce for so long and then going into an industry like this, or I think any art form or creative, there is a different perspective, and you've gone through a lot of things in your career, so it's kind of like petty stuff.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
and I'm just not here for it. And I remember I hosted somebody else's gig, and the first job he gave me, and I was like, again, it was free. It was an opportunity. I saw it as an opportunity to give hosting a try. I hosted my own night, so I'd done a few myself already, so I wasn't a complete novice. But I went to host this night as a guest host, and the first thing he did was give me a clipboard and give me a list of names and told them to write them out in my best handwriting. I know.
Okay, so people can't see us, but
I was going to say,
we're both wide-eyed at this point, like very.
The listeners at home, you can imagine, as a 36-year-old woman as I was, who is a senior PR person, well regarded in an international role, being handed a clipboard by a man and told to write me out in my best handwriting, as though somehow that was going to help me as a professional and a performer. The audacity. But and do you know what? I did it because
right.
Why? I was like, why have an argument? I'll do it. And I earnestly checked it after I written it. And the list was for me because I was the MC. But it was just the weirdest exercise in, like, for want of a better word, I guess, dominance.
Yeah.
It was like, I felt like I'd been put in my place. And we had a conversation that night as well, because there's this weird thing in comedy that I guess is like years experience in some sectors, that how many gigs have you done, as though that's some kind of reference point for how good you are. And I've seen people who've done 5 gigs who've been absolutely astonishing. That was not me. I was not 5 gig good. And I've seen people who are awful, who've been doing it for 10 years, but it's this arbitrary thing. So so I had to ask people how many gigs they'd done as part of this process, with my best written notes. And he asked me, how many gigs have you done? And I said, I think about 78 now, including the gigs that I host. And he was like, oh no, hosting doesn't count towards your total of shows. I'm like, who came up with this? This is not a recognised unit of measurement. So how could it possibly not count? It was just so weird that all these gatekeepers had come together to come up with a load of rules that didn't necessarily make any sense or have any rational basis. And people who aren't, maybe, like I said, more confident of themselves are just having to adhere to it. And you just have to buy into this, because otherwise, if I was like a 19, 20-year-old, I absolutely would have accepted all of this verbatim. But it's coming in and seeing a different perspective. And I think that's why I wanted to start my own nights as much as anything, because I wanted there to be other options available to quieter people, that where they wouldn't be told, well, if you haven't got 100 gigs, you can go away. So
yeah, and there's a lot that ask for 150.
Yeah, it's like, based on what? They could be 150 terrible shows.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I have a spreadsheet and I count them, and luckily I was just doing that before, just because of liking to have metrics on myself, I guess, on the things I like. I don't keep metrics on the things I don't like about myself, just on the
No,
things I do.
we're data driven. It'll help us learn.
Right, it helps. But yeah, so I did want to talk to you about your own nights and about your podcast. But so when you look at doing your own nights, and again, just going back and thinking about the leadership style you like too, has that influenced how you put on your nights and how you book them and how you treat people? I saw you just from afar at your night, like I was just in the audience watching, but engaging with everyone and stuff. And I observed some things, but how do you approach it based on just what you have learned in business and in comedy?
I just wanted it to be a great experience for everyone. And I guess like my background in corporate events helps that. You treat it almost like a story. It's how I approached my wedding as well. Like there's a narrative. There were moments that I wanted people to observe. There were also like moments where I wanted people to have some quiet reflection time in the wedding. So it was like almost storyboarded. And I think that was my vibe for my comedy nights. Like I wanted from the moment an audience member stepped in to feel like they were in a comedy night, not that they were in just a room upstairs in a pub. So we had like I bought a neon flamingo because like I call the comedy club Neon Flamingo. So I bought a neon flamingo to make sure that the brand was there, but it was a different type of lighting in the room. So you didn't go from one pub room to another pub room. That was important to me. I wanted it to be cabaret style because I don't like sitting in lines. I never liked not having somewhere to put my drink. And also I'm really conscious of my legs. Like when I've done like stage panels, it's like I forget what my arms and legs would do at rest because you're aware that everybody's like looking at the whole you.
Yeah.
So I always feel more comfortable in most environments having something in front of me or something to lean on. So I wanted to make sure that people had that. So from an audience perspective, like I was thinking about when I was putting that on, but I was also thinking of the kind of comedy nights that I liked. And I was like, I valued having like an area where you could be with other acts because having a chat with the other acts is part of what makes the night so much fun. So there was like an area where the acts could sit, and there's towards the end we managed to get access to another room, so there was like a green room. I always made sure and this is like the privilege of having a full-time job. I was able to, when acts came, offer them a drink like on the club and like get some chips and pizza and make sure it's there because like comedy does not pay. And and I couldn't pay a lot, but there was a bucket split, and of the bucket split, I could share it out with people. Like, so I wanted it to be good for everyone, and I really wanted there to be a aspirational headliner, even when it was open mic, because I started it as like open mic with a pro headliner, because it changes the energy of the night. The audience has got something to look forward to, and it brought them in. So it was worth paying a pro to come in. So the audience got something. They knew there was going to be something good.
Right. Yeah.
And it also validated all the names underneath. Because when you see a pro, you would just assume, because we didn't advertise it as like open mic level, it was just a comedy night, up and coming and pro. So it set an expectation. So the audience wasn't sitting there ready to cringe.
Yeah.
Like they would if it was an open mic or new material. But also the acts stepped up because they were performing in front of a pro, and before a pro, they were on a pro bill. I wanted everyone's faces to be on the poster. Nice. So when I was doing my compilation nights, I made flyers and posters where everybody's face was on it because I felt like people would be proud to have their face next to the professional face, because that's the sort of thing I would want.
Yeah.
Also, it's the sort of thing that you'd be more likely to share, because there's like when you see posters and it's just the MC, for example, or just the name of the night, and they're like, you need to share these assets. It's like, my name's not even on it.
Right. Yeah.
My Facebook friends have had enough. They're all blending into one. So I wanted it to be something slick that people could share, that they'd want to share. And I made flyers and I put them out on the tables for people to keep. Because again, it was something that I wanted my gig to be one of those that people talked about, that acts wanted to do, that they told other acts about. That was something that meant a lot to me. And because of that, by the end, there were as many sort of pros trying new material as there were open micers. And as it was, it kind of squeezed the time that I had for my friends that I kind of started it for. And I started to feel quite guilty about the balance because people wanted to come and do it. And that's, it is kind of, that is the approach that I took to it. It's like, I wanted everybody to have a good time.
Nice. No, that's great. And I think too, that's a good point about just kind of other people will step up their game, because sometimes it's hard. You get demotivated after a while because you're going up after someone who just kind of, just threw up all over the room because they
Yeah.
were giving up or they were having a bad day, and they're like, well, it's just an open mic. And
Yeah,
it's
and the MC doesn't necessarily, because there are so many acts on an open mic, doesn't have the time to change the energy or the
no,
will. So you
no.
have good MCs, and that's what I aspire to be. I'm not there yet, but you see the really good MCs that if somebody's absolutely smashed it, they'll bring it down to a
Mm-hmm.
level so the expectations aren't too high. But if someone has died, they will bring it up a little bit and will sort of take the heat for it so you can move on to something else. And that's the true skill, I think, in
Yeah.
hosting. And you don't necessarily see it because you don't know. If someone's good, you don't know that's been done. And it's only when you come out and you go, oh, wow, that was a roller coaster, because that MC has kind of guided you through it and they've been the consistent point. So,
Right.
because
And
everyone can have a bad night, even like proper brilliant pros could like land wrongly. So I think the audience it becomes one unit sometimes, and it's not individuals. So if a lot of people aren't laughing, you kind of doubt your own version of events, so you don't laugh either, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then if a comedian maybe picks on somebody a little bit too hard, I've seen the audience as one, because they like that person because maybe they've been picked on earlier and they come across well, turn against the comic on the stage because it's come across as mean-spirited and given them a really hard time. So there's an alchemy, I think, to hosting, and I think the people that are good are so good, and I love seeing pros handle hecklers like that as well. So and again, if you're a newer comic, seeing a pro being heckled and shut it down, you learn something, and
mm-hmm.
it's worth coming to the night. So even if the audience isn't massive, you've learned something. And I think the beauty of comedy, particularly women in comedy, is I can't believe how generous with their time like the female pro comedians have been with me. And like they come to the nights and they stay for the night. They don't just turn up and do their set. They'll come early, they'll watch other people's performances, and they're really kind to the performers afterwards. And you go away feeling absolutely buzzing. Like if somebody who you really like and respect has gone, oh yeah, that was really funny actually, you go away like, yes. And
Yeah.
it's I've got a lot out of it. And I can't believe, like I said, how generous with their time pro comedians have been when I've like DM'd them, like I said, slid into the DMs and said, I've set up this night and I'm trying to do things a bit differently as a woman in comedy. I want to make a safe space. Will you help me? They've, hugely supportive. So,
yeah, and then but that kind of also, to me, that's kind of how you operate, is you're generous with your time and what you can do. I mean, that's what we've been talking about for a lot of this, right? And so you're getting that back. And I think it's just, if you were one of those people who was constantly shutting people down, probably, and shutting people out, I doubt you would be experiencing that.
but but I got a lot of feedback early on in my career that I was a bit much, or that I showed too much personality. Like an old senior person who wasn't my boss, but somebody very senior in PR told me when I was 2 or 3 years in. So I was a professional, I wasn't brand new, but I could drop the ditzy shtick
Oh,
and start being taken seriously. And like he meant it as helpful advice. He was like, you don't need that anymore. You're a good practitioner. You don't need this dizzy, giggly thing that you're doing. And it is, it's going to affect your credibility. And I remember being absolutely gutted and coming out of there. And then over the years, that did stick with me. Like it didn't really moderate my behavior because that's not the person I am, but it did haunt me a lot. So if I was being outgoing in a meeting, for example, or chatting to somebody too much, or maybe sharing something personal in a business like lunch, it would sort of, that little voice would come back and go, you being too much. But I've been fine with that. And it's when I try and temper it that I've not been very successful. So I don't think I've come up against, and I've worked with some really like quite stuffy financial services and quite stuffy journalists, and they've always responded really well to it. So it was well-meaning advice that really was bad advice. And I think maybe that was true because he was an older person. Maybe that was true then, but I think where we are now, professionals can be respected on their own terms. You don't have to wear a suit every day. to be a senior marketer, for example. In fact, like jeans and a turtleneck and a blazer is very much the form. Also, your entrepreneurs, your grey t-shirts, jeans, Mark Zuckerberg's have completely changed the game in terms of how professionals are perceived. And I think that is quite freeing. As much as I think hipster nonsense offices still drive me crazy. I don't want to slide down a slide to get into work. I don't want to play with Lego. But I think those kind of marketing agencies, the dynamic kind of joke marketing agencies, did a lot for people who are a little bit odder.
Yeah. I think it's how those certain feedback does stick with you, and how when giving feedback, it's so important to consider what you're saying. I've had those things happen where someone didn't mean to do that, but they kind of flattened me. And it's just okay, think about say what you mean, and think about the words you're using to say that, and I don't know.
It was like, I was like, this is not a shtick. This is who I am.
Yeah, you can drop your act of being you, and you can be that lady.
Yeah, stop this quirky thing. Like, put your suit on now. You've earned it. It's like, no, thank you. So I've always looked to hire those kind of people as well. So when I've been in a position to hire for teams, I look for those characteristics, the kind of outgoing, the slightly different view, because it's nice to have different views. So
no, that's important. And so speaking of different, your podcast is really cool, really funny. It's like sitting and sometimes I'm like, should I be having coffee with this or a beer at this point?
Always beer.
All right. But yeah, so talk about your podcast, Comedy Arcade. I think it's great. I've shown a few friends in this. Well, I've sent a link. I mean, I don't showcase it.
You're not having listening parties on this? What?
Yeah. Well, you get more listens if I don't, It's
I'm
better
shutting this up right now.
No, you want me to share it, not just have one person listen to one feed. But so talk about your podcast, because I want more people to listen to it. I think it's great.
So it started off because obviously comedy shut down during lockdown in the traditional sense, because people weren't allowed to go out and perform. And I still desperately needed the attention and validation that I had. I did not have the stage for it anymore, so I had to create it. So I saw a lot of people doing open mic nights online. I didn't love the format of them. Like, I'm doing them. I still haven't found one that I think has absolutely smashed it, like at open mic level. I've seen some pro ones that are really good, but open mics, we're all doing our best, but we're having to find the answers together. And these brave souls that have jumped in and that are making the mistakes for us and learning on the job are doing us all a service. But I just didn't want to add another one to the mix. So I was getting invites to like 30 or 40 open mic comedy nights a week that were going on Zoom. And I'll level with you, if I'm not on an open mic, even if I'm in real life, odds are I'm not going to it.
Right.
But I'm not performing. Unless it's like a mate doing it I really care about. That is not what I do in my spare time. You see enough of it on the ones that you're on. So the idea of watching a 2-hour Zoom show of amateur comedy in my own home when other options were available did not float my boat. So I just didn't want to be another one of those. So I thought, what could I do that's different? And rather than try and do more stand-up, I thought the conversations that I were because I started a series of conversations on a Sunday afternoon with comedians on Instagram Live, where I just messaged them and said, can I interview you for an hour just on comedy, on your experiences, just in case anyone wants to watch it? And they all said yes. I had some really cool people on, and I got so much from being able to ask them questions that they don't get asked by interviewers normally,
right? Or
they don't trot out for panel shows. So I got to know comedians, and the people that watched seemed to get to know comedians a little bit better. And some of them are so funny off the cuff, a lot of them even funnier than their written material. So I thought, how can I use this and make it into a concept? So I came up with the idea of doing a kind of roulette for conversation, where I put 30 topics into a bingo ball, and whatever topic came out, they just jump in with a story or an anecdote, or they could do material if they wanted to. But I was like, the only thing is, don't make it sound like material. This isn't a show. This is a conversation. Yeah. And I invited 3 comedians to do the first one, Jen Brister, Kate McCabe, and Tom Tuck. because I knew them all. So I was like, and I'd seen people stream on Twitch, so I streamed it on Twitch, and people liked it, and more comedians did it for me. And one week the tech failed, and I only had the sound file. And some of the people that were listening to it that normally watched it said, "Send us the file. Where's the show? Send us the file." And the feedback was, "This could work as a podcast. Have you ever thought about doing a podcast?" And I was like, "Not up until now, but yes, now let's do it." So I turned that format into something that would work for listeners. Booked a studio, recorded 10 episodes with whoever would come and do it with me. And people really like it. It works. And again, like Sam Rhodes, who runs a lot of really good comedy nights in London in the good times, he made my jingle for me because I was a Patreon supporter of his. And one of the Patreon tiers was, he'll write a little song for you. So I messaged him and I said, "Well, do you want to do a jingle for my show instead?" So he did me a jingle. So it sounded authentic. My photographer friend, like I said, did some photography for me, which were, I don't know who the person in the picture is. It looks a little bit like me, but she is so glamorous. And we came up with the idea in July, and we put our first episode out in October. And it charted on iTunes in the comedy interviews chart at 24 in the first week.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And like none of the comedians were like internationally renowned on the first episode. So it's something in the concept people just really liked, and it's just ticked along since then. So booking the last tranche of comedians was a lot easier because people have heard of it now.
Right.
And partly because of my astonishing PR job on it, people think it's going really well. And it is, whether it's going as well as I am projecting on my social media. Well, you don't get to know that. But yeah, so
well, it'd be bad though if you go, "Oh, it's not doing as well." Like if I did that, "Oh, it's not doing as well as I want it to, guys." So I don't know. You should listen. Maybe. Yeah, no, sell it.
You better come on in the next episode because it might not be anymore.
Yeah, that's how I can get people on. No one's listening. So I don't know how long I have in me.
You could sell your comedy wares to literally tens of people.
Yeah, you invite 3 people. There are 3 of you.
There's an audience of at least 3 because there are 4 on this panel, and one of them's you.
That'd be so awful. The worst. Then you're like, "Yeah, I'm good at PR."
It's something you can't fake though. Like you can't buy your way into the charts. It's a real exercise of patience for me because I'm used to being able to spin things or throw stuff at things or do some kind of mad marketing thing to push things further than they should be in the time that I've been given. But you have to wait with podcasts. The people are coming, but podcast is probably one of the only forms of entertainment where peer-to-peer recommendation is still the primary form that your word gets out. You can put your podcast in front of people on ads, you can do banners, you can do Facebook advertising, but there's so much of it that's not going to get people to listen. You need somebody to go, "I listened to this and I loved it, and you'll love it because of this." So word of mouth is quite slow.
Yeah, unless you're, Brene Brown or Michelle Obama launched podcasts. Did you see, I don't know how you feel about the Royals or whatever, but I just thought this was so funny because I was talking to a buddy about how brutal the press is over here. The press is so brutal.
Oh my God, yeah.
So like Meghan and Harry launched their podcast and like a whale sounds podcast rated better than it. And they're like, "Harry and Meghan humiliated as whale sounds."
Yeah, you can't compare. That's not even comparing apples and pears. That's comparing apples and Lego bricks. The people that are listening to a whale song have a very different vibe to the people that want current affairs to the eyes of royals.
And then they were saying like who was on their podcast, and Elton John, and I don't know who else. That was the name that I caught just because I love him. But like, it was just so funny to me, And I thought, well,
that's a PR person though. That's the thing. This is a journalist and a PR thinking. It's like, what can we do to have a unique spin on this story? And that whale song thing is perfect. So I could see how the story was made, but it doesn't really stand up to any kind of ethical scrutiny.
So one last thing I want to chat about, and then we'll get to this. I have this fun 5 questions.
Okay.
Is just like, you've written some articles about like body image stuff and just I'll just say, like, for me, I'll relate it to me and then go with it. But like one reason I didn't do comedy for about 10 years, and I tried improv before that, and I didn't do well in it, but it's not because I was not that good at it, is I was just totally uncomfortable with my body. And it was what resonated with me was you said something, I'm going to read something you wrote. Doing comedy has forced me to make my peace with a lot of things. When you are on stage, you're fully exposed from the top of your head to your feet. There is no clever angle to hide behind. Braced for years to reject all photos and videos of myself that aren't to a very specific self-taken brief, I've relaxed a tiny bit because I can see the happiness and energy I feel when I'm on stage making people laugh, and that is beautiful. So, and then you go on and I'll link to the article, but that resonated with me so much and so profoundly because I know there are other people too who don't fit this certain standard that we see on certain magazines that tell us that that's what everyone wants to see. And so how did you just kind of come to that?
I think well, I'm still, I'm still not there yet. I don't think anybody is. Like on a bad day, you have a bad day, and and it's just you kind of have to accept that as part of that. Just we are hardwired to those standards, unfortunately. But I think I was so excited initially when I first started doing comedy. I was so excited to be doing something that I thought I would never do, that the adrenaline kind of pushed through the, oh, I don't want people to look at me. And then my friends would be taking photos of me. And I didn't have time to worry about like, oh, that's a low angle, I'm not going to like that. I was aware of it because there's like a track on my mind that where that dog is always running on that racetrack. So, but yeah, you have to watch the videos back. Like I had to buy the videos to watch them back to try and learn from them, and I had to really push past like, oh, I look terrible. Do I really look like that? And see beyond it to the material, and that's when I started to like it. Like even if it wasn't how I would have loved to look, like I was proud of those sets, and I was proud of how much fun I was having and the laughs, and I could see how much fun I was having and how sparkling my eyes were, and like the smile was real, even if it was in a face that I thought was chubbier in the video than I looked in real life. Like I started to make those decisions. So I was sharing things that I would never have shared. Like if I was in the back of a video looking like that, I would bury it digitally. Like untag, message my friend and say, crop me out. Like yeah, but like pictures of me on stage. So I wanted people to know that I'd done those gigs, and it started to matter to me more. That started to matter more than the cosmetic elements of it, which was really, I needed that a lot. But it's still, you can't help but be aware of it. You can't help but like assess how you look. When you're looking at the comedians that make it on TV as well, and they sit in two boxes. There's the fat funny people. That's a box that I need to make my peace with being in. Like, and there's the LGBTQ. So there's a very specific look to some of the queer comedians that you see that apparently the press seems to really love. And you've got your beautiful doll, Catherine Ryan's and Rachel Paris's that are sort of more conventionally like. But I think what made me sad, and like what still makes me sad, is those boxes do exist, and they do exist in people's heads. So it's like, oh yeah, like you're like Dawn French, Victoria Wood, fat, funny personality people. Or that's not true for men. Right. There are no boxes for men, are there? Like we could box up all the famous female comedians into probably 4 genres of the ones that sort of break through. How is that? Like, I don't look at Jason Manford and a couple of like Kevin Bridges and go, "Oh, you're the chubby man,
right?
That was funny in school." I just think you're funny in individual ways. I don't crop, and I think that disappoints me. And I think there's a lot of work to do in the comedy industry because of that. Because they don't get judged by that, and they don't get judged. Their set isn't judged by like men and women going, "Oh yeah, as I thought, all men aren't funny." Like if Kevin Bridges isn't funny, people go, Kevin Bridges isn't funny. If Joe Brand isn't funny on one show, men go, oh, women aren't funny. It's like I thought. Like
it's true.
It's so much harder. It's so much harder to be seen as good on your own merit because everybody wants to go, oh, you're funny like Rebel Wilson, you're funny like this person. You don't see that with men. No one's looking at these male comedians going, you're funny like this person. They, you see occasional like Stuart Lee wannabes where it comes through in the style.
Right.
But no one looks at a man telling generic stories about his penis and goes, oh, you're just like this whole bunch of comedians. Even though that's all male comedians. Men talking about their penises.
Yeah, it's true. Different. It's very true. Yeah, because it's so fascinating to everyone.
Yeah, it was the first thing that happened to me when I first started getting into comedy. People would come up to me at the end and they go, oh my God, you remind me so much of. And I was braced for it each time. I was like, they're going to say Rebel Wilson. And I had to get used to it because that was in their mind a funny, overweight woman. That's it. Yeah. They've drawn the line. You're like this person. I was like, well, our comedy styles aren't really the same. In fact, she's not even known for stand-up. She pretty much does a lot of character-based acting. So I don't remember rolling about on the floor, but sure. I guess there's a compliment in this somewhere, but I can't see it right now. But and the more people told me, the more I did make my peace with it, and the less it bothered me. So it's almost like, what is it, like immersion therapy? We have so much of it thrown at you that you just come out the other side.
I just keep saying it. So yeah, and it's not meant to be. They mean it just like that's the funniest person that they think like you that
looks like me.
Right. It's nothing to do with your comedy style, right? No. And that's another thing. Like when guys get compared to other guys, it's the style of comedy. It's not the clothes. Yeah. Because I would say I dress more like Ricky Gervais half the time than anyone, right? Yeah. But like, I mean, honestly, yeah. So it's just like, because it's just like wear a plain t-shirt and jeans, and but I would never get compared to him. I mean, I guess if I started doing stuff like him, I don't. But like, that'd be kind of cool. But it's funny.
It's unlikely that you will be, though, isn't it?
Because I got feedback one day. I got told I should butch it up. And I was like, I'm not even gay. So what do you mean? Like, you've decided that's what it was the weirdest thing. And I was like, bye. Like, I stopped seeing that instructor because I was like, no.
That's exactly what we were talking about. That's somebody seeing 4 boxes you could be in and going, do you know what? You could be stronger in this box. Be that. Rather than, why don't we develop you so you're in your own, you start your own box, which is you.
It's strange, but I really appreciate you sharing those kind of thoughts and being open about that, because I think that is helpful to people, I want more people to do it. And that's the thing. I want everyone to do it. And I don't want people to not do it because they see others looking outwardly confident and think, oh, that's not the person I am. That wasn't the person I was. Like, I had to redesign who I was, or kind of reverse engineer it, basically, because it was something that I wanted to do so badly. I had to make the pieces fit. And I started wearing like all black because I thought I wanted to be smaller. Like, I wanted to take up less space. I didn't want my size to be included in how people rated me as a comedian. And as time has got on, I now favor a massive statement sleeve. I take up more space, and I'm okay with taking up that space. So I feel like I deserve it. And it's work in progress, but as something I can sort of look back on and look at all the black outfits that I thought might be slimming that I wore on my first gigs to now. That's interesting, actually. Yeah. Yeah, because you're very, I would say, now I'm trying to find the right word because, see, the words do matter. But I would say, more flamboyant than all black, right?
Yeah. It wasn't it didn't really suit who I was, and it wasn't how I dressed for work, but it was how I felt I should dress. And also I, at the time, felt like I had to adhere to, nobody else dressed up. Like, I was so excited to do a show. A show for me would be full makeup, proper hair, because you're going out in front of people, and not a lot of that on the open mic circuit. People coming straight from work, and I thought, oh, maybe I need to dress down to fit in, but like I said, I realized quite quickly that fitting in wasn't really going to get me any further than just being myself. So
no, that's cool. That's great. Well, I'm glad you did that, because I think you're definitely like a voice people need, and especially the podcast. And I think we've got another at least half a year where that's going to be a lot of people.
Certainly easier to book guests when they have no other offers.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I have a fun five, like a set of questions. So first, before that, I asked, is there any like last advice you want to impart or that you haven't said? I mean, we've kind of delved into quite a bit, but
No, I just think, and it's really cliche, isn't it, to be like, oh, be as authentic as you can be. But that's the only way things have worked out for me. And whenever I've tried to deviate from that or be something that didn't quite fit, it never worked out. So,
yeah, I mean, I think I don't know, it's cliche in a way, but probably not because people still need to hear that,
yeah.
they're still not doing it. All right. So this last five questions, this is really based on my wardrobe, but what's the oldest t-shirt you have and still wear?
Oh, I am a hoarder of clothes because I've got so many that some don't see the light of day for years, but then it is the exact thing that I want. Uh, and, and yeah, they are so old. So I've got like a She-Ra one that when I was about 19 or 20, that to be edgy, I cut the sleeves off and cut the most atrocious jagged neck hole. And I can't get rid of it. I can't give it up.
No, I get it.
That was a vibe that I had. But yeah, I've got loads, and then people will see me in some of the better wearing things and go, "Oh my god, where'd you get that?" And be like, "Oh, Topshop, 15 years ago."
Perfect.
You can't have it. It was from 15 years ago.
Nice. So, one thing people have said is that it's been like Groundhog's Day lately, just since we've been in this pandemic, and so Bill Murray would hear "I Got You, Babe" playing every morning from his alarm clock. So what song would you have on your alarm clock waking you up every morning if it really was Groundhog's Day?
Oh, there are loads of songs actually that I never get tired of hearing. One, it's very, it's very emo. Dashboard Confessional, hands down, it is one of the most perfect like pop punk songs I've ever heard. It's like it captures like all of the excitement of like the first date when you're like 17 or 18 and everything was like the one thing you had to worry about was getting home in time for your curfew. It's just perfect, optimistic, pure pop. So
No.
that is a hot tip.
All right. Yeah, maybe I'll do a playlist of everyone's songs actually.
Yeah.
All right.
This is a question that's going to haunt me later because I'm going to think of 10 others that I like more. Right,
I know. Coffee or tea or neither?
Why would you make me choose? I used to be hardcore camp tea, but I've lent into coffee mainly because I could afford good coffee. So I've got one of those stovetop coffee things now, but I never want more than one of those. So I think still tea.
Okay, still tea. But yeah, I know it's a habit. Okay, and when was like the last time you remember laughing so hard you cried or just couldn't stop, or like something that you think of now that makes you do that?
Oh, any video of somebody falling over, as long as it doesn't look like they're badly hurt.
Have you seen this one called Grape Lady Falls?
No, but I can't wait.
Okay, I'm gonna send it to you, and for anyone listening, it's just Google, and I'll just send it to you, Vic, so you don't have to do this. Google Grape Lady Falls.
Grape Lady Falls. Gemma Collins' fall is worth watching as well. It's a reality TV star who falls over an award ceremony. I revisit it often when I'm sad.
All right. Yeah, that's so terrible. So
she
terrible.
She was fine.
Well, that's the thing. They're fine. I mean, I fall quite a bit, so I don't know. Maybe it's just payback. All right.
Oh, I love when I fall over as well. I'm just as amused by that.
All right, and who inspires you right now?
Oh, too many people. Like loads of day-to-day people, I guess, that are just getting out there doing things that are way above sometimes I just see. It's so hard in lockdown. Sometimes you don't even want to get out of bed. So the people that are not only getting out of bed doing their stuff, but also like volunteering and doing that kind of stuff as well. Amazing. Like the stuff that like the bravery of Eddie Izzard, the comedian, who's just come out as a trans woman and really probably didn't have to stick a neck out like that for, because could have just lived a quiet life, had so much love and respect, and so many fans didn't need to ever formalize it and chose to do that for a greater purpose. and like also brought some kind of like, they've recently brought a take about J.K. Rowling, how like she doesn't think J.K. Rowling is in her soul like transphobic, and it's like it's really interesting hearing somebody take on those topics and offer a different take, and it's necessary to the conversation because obviously everybody is so polarized and so angry on conversational spaces like Twitter that having somebody with that particular experience coming out and offering a different view, I think is so brave. And didn't have to. That's the thing, didn't have to. Could have just lived a quiet life, being their true self. I think there's something really cool about that. And I was already a huge fan, but I think it's really great.
The 20 doing marathons every day, right? Or something.
I know. That's what I mean. Like, imagine having that kind of energy and that kind of time and being so honest and so generous in a world that has not been generous to them in a lot of ways. So, and genuinely, like one of the reasons that I fell in love with comedy, I used to listen to Eddie Izzard's comedy albums like other people would listen to music. Like, even though I'd heard all the jokes a million times, there was something in it that there was always something new to find. That's still my before bed listening as well. If I can't sleep, I will put one of those old ones on and
Nice. All right. Well, Vix, thanks so much. This has been really great to chat with you and just learn about your career in both comedy and PR. So I really appreciate it. And definitely will point people to the podcast.
Please do.
Yeah. No, this is exciting. It's like, go from this one, just go straight to Comedy Arcade.
Straight there. Yeah. You don't even have to listen to it. Just let it play in another room.
Yes, on all your devices. Just do that.
Yeah. Why listen on one when you can listen on two? Get on your phone and your laptop. You can have it playing twice on two different players on a single laptop, I found.
Oh my gosh. Hacks. All right. Well, thanks so much, Vix. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. This has been really fun.
Thanks for joining me this week. You can find out more about our guest in the show notes. The music you're probably moving to by now is by Joe Maffia. Find him on Spotify. That's Joe, Maffia. And Rob Metke is responsible for our visual design. You can find him online by searching for Rob, Metke. Thanks, Rob. Let us know who you'd like to hear from or about your own experiences defining yourself outside of work at More Than Work Pod on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Give us a follow. Or visit our website at rabiasaid.com. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening to More Than Work. We'll be back next week with another guest. In the meantime, while being kind to others, don't forget to be kind to yourself.